This whole thing reminds me of Game of Thrones. I think all the politicians should watch Game of Thrones. I think what's more exciting is everyone is trying to create an environment that is favoring to their position.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Are We Okay? And this time we're doing it in person. My name is Dr. Ong Kian Ming, or OKM for short, and we have...
I am Mr. Money, Peter.
So Peter, I'm back from
Yes.
my holiday.
Yeah, how was Australia? Australia is well known for their coffee culture there.
You can't run away from coffee in Australia.
Is there anything similar like our sponsor Zeus there?
I think just like Zeus logo in Australia, coffee is a necessity. And we have with us today here, Zeus Coffee. This is CEO Latte. Thanks so much, Zeus, for your continued sponsorship. And thanks so much for supporting Are We Okay? So, Peter, I went to Brisbane and Gold Coast for the first time. Quite interesting. I won't go too much into the trip, but one of the things that I thought about when I first landed in the Brisbane airport was that, very fast, clear immigration very quickly. My thoughts immediately went to Brisbane 2032. You know what's happening in Brisbane in 2032? Can you guess?
No.
There's a sporting event. Starts with an O.
Olympics.
Yes, exactly. So I was thinking, the airport is a bit small. Infra maybe needs to be expanded. And, I thought, come back here again a couple of years' time to go and see whether they've expanded the airport and also increased the number of flights there, because it will be important for the Brisbane Olympics in 2032. And that's also related to one of the topics
Part of our topic today.
20,000 subscribers last week.
Finally hit the milestone of 20,000. Before we go into the topic of today, so I understand in Australia, the running community is quite big there, right? Because it's quite nice to run and so on. Every time I see my friends go there, they sure join some of a running group. So do you join any running group?
I didn't join any running group, but I did run in Gold Coast and also in Brisbane. And, they have actually very good runners, whether it's in the marathon or the sprints, 400 meters. In the Sydney Olympics back in 2000, I still remember somebody called by the name of Cathy Freeman. Who won the 400 meters, and she was very famous in Australia because she was also an Aboriginal athlete. And won the gold medal. So, they have a very good tradition of very good athletes.
I was just wondering to myself, because as I was researching about this MAHB topic as well, I found that Australia has one of the largest private infrastructure investor in the market, right? Do you think that the infrastructure in Australia is actually very good, and is it easier to move around there with the infrastructure and so on compared to Malaysia?
I think it's not bad. In the cities itself, it's very well organized. They have good public transport linkages, especially in bigger cities such as Melbourne and Sydney. And in those bigger cities, they are investing a lot for different kind of infrastructure works. Sydney, they're building this very big tunnel project, and one of the key companies that are involved in that infrastructure project is none other than Gamuda, which won a open tender for this tunneling project in Sydney. And one of the reasons why Australia is able to invest a lot more on city infrastructure is because not all of this infrastructure spending is funded by the federal government. Some comes from the state, some comes from the city, and this is because they have more independent revenue raising sources from different levels of government.
I see. So I guess this leads us right into the topic of today itself, right?
The first topic, yes, which is the announcement that EPF, Khazanah, and two other entities are going to take MAHB private. That's the announcement that was made on the 15th of May 2024. Press statement was published by Khazanah as well as EPF. It invited a lot of public attention because of the involvement of US-based investment fund called BlackRock, indirectly through one of the entities that they own called Global Infrastructure Projects, or GIP. But when you first heard of this, what was your initial reaction?
So as an investor, the first thing that came to my mind was, they're offering at 11 ringgit per share. Not bad. Means the share price is going to go up. That's the first thing that I thought about it myself. Aside from that, the next thing that came to my mind was that I thought MAHB recently is doing quite well, and it's actually a rather profitability-wise has always been quite good. Yeah, there's a lot of room for growth, but why? Because it's profitable. So if you're talking about mass, I can understand, but MAHB,
I think that is the right track in terms of asking the right questions about this deal. But I think when we want to approach this from a public policy perspective, we need to ask a few questions that is logical, that makes sense, I hope, to the policymakers and also to the public that is watching this space. The first thing that I would think of, and the first question I would ask, is how will this privatization improve the quality of service at MAHB? Improve the quality of service at the airports in Malaysia that MAHB operates, which is almost all except for one in Senai. The main ones would be KLIA and KLIA2. Do you think that it was clear from the kind of narrative that was coming out with regards to whether this privatization would increase the quality of service?
Does it really improve the quality of service? The same thing, right? I really have a question, because do you really need privatization to make it better? The only thing that they actually came out and then said about it was that government, not so much of money, is not going to be, it's going to be a burden for taxpayer. But as I was looking at it also, it's like, it's making money, what? So how is it a burden for taxpayer? In fact, isn't it good? Yeah, because you're investing the taxpayers' money. So here are some of the things that came across my mind. And in terms of like, are they answering the question? I feel like not really. But as I did a little bit of digging, I am starting to suspect that it probably has got to do with access to a certain funds and also to be a part of this competition towards the Belt and Road system. Yeah, but that's more of the overall, we're looking at it at the investor perspective.
This is what the press statement issued by Khazanah and EPF said in terms of the benefits of this privatization exercise. First one is to support MAHB to deliver high priority capital projects, including the Aerotrain and also baggage handling systems at KLIA. So this is part of the capital investment that you're talking about. And of course, it extends to other areas as well, including if you want to expand the physical space for retail and other activities in KLA or perhaps in some of the other smaller airports. Second, enhance the passenger experience by alleviating congestion, improving passenger flows and terminal ambience, and expanding the retail and food and the beverage offering at MAHB's airports. This is also important because airports do not just rely on the passenger service charges and charging the airlines for their revenue, but they also rely on things like retail rentals and also things like parking and other charges, right? So this is also an important one. And you think about it from a retail experience. When you go to Changi and when you go to KLIA, what's the difference?
Huge.
How would you describe the retail experience?
Put it this way, when I go to Changi, I feel like I've just entered Pavilion. When I go to KLIA, I probably feel more like I've entered Mines, maybe. Yeah.
How about KLIA 2 then?
More of I entered the old Carrefour kind of feeling, right? Yeah.
Maybe like South City Plaza and Serdang.
Yes.
Very empty, no
even
shops.
smaller mall. Okay, to say that KLIA is a Mines also, not too fair a little bit more upgrade towards there
So yeah, that would be an important aspect to also consider, because if you have more retail space, more retail activity, then you'll have also more rental for MAHB.
That's right.
Which means there'll be less pressure for you to increase the passenger service charges and things like that. Another benefit they talk about is working closely to support existing airlines and strengthening management resources to attract new airline customers to MAHB, particularly in the long-haul segment. Right. So this is also an important argument to put forth, because we know that this KLIA 1 and 2 have lost a lot of international airlines. For example, there are no American airlines that fly into Malaysia. Lufthansa actually stopped flying into Malaysia already, and this is part and parcel of us losing out to Bangkok as well as Singapore from a flight connectivity. That's another one. Maintaining the highest level of safety for passengers and employees. Okay, fair enough. Accelerating capital investment to repair and maintain the existing infrastructure and equipment. We talked about that. And then also upgrading and harmonizing operational service standards across MAHB's state airports. Right. So after KLIA and KLIA 2, can you guess which is the busiest airport after these two in the Klang Valley?
I would say the Penang.
In Peninsula Malaysia, that would be true, but it's actually Kota Kinabalu.
Oh.
A lot of international flights coming from Hong Kong, Japan, China, Korea.
Yes.
Definitely there's room to actually expand the kind of operational services and even capital investment in those airports, and trying to get more flights into places like Kota Baru. Right. So that's another one. And then finally, partnering with state bodies and local businesses to develop ancillary businesses around the airports, right?
Yep.
Retail, parking, the stuff that we talked about. This is where the communications part comes in. When you have this kind of important statement, right, you cannot just do it by a press statement. You issue the press statement and you are not able to control the narrative.
That's right.
When this happens, the journalists can't really go and do a Q&A. They want to ask more questions, they can't. There are different areas of emphasis that may
That's
not
right.
be able to come true when you just have a press statement. And the result is the whole thing got hijacked by others, including Wan Faisal, the MP for Bersatu, who said that, oh, this one, we're selling out our airport sort of like rights and operational jurisdiction to a US investment fund that has been blacklisted by the BDS movement. This is related to the things that are happening in the Middle East and Gaza, right? So from your perspective, as somebody who is involved in communications, public communications, do you think this was a mistake on the part of Khazanah and EPF not to come up with a live media conference?
Yeah, I think the thing about it is, because the first time when we hear this whole thing, it's straight away very near to this whole announcement by Bursa as well, and things like that, right? So there was really no prep. I think they forgot the fact that the shareholders ultimately, who actually owns part of the story.
Yeah, all of us take
Yes.
flights, right?
That's right. And all of us have this feeling that this is part of a national asset. I think the narrative should have at least highlight all these things first on how all these things affect the growth of MAHB, and then what are some of the challenges that they are facing if they don't take outside investment like that, right? Then only you usher in like who's the player and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that actually would be sort of like my second area of questioning, which is who was actually handling the communications part, right? Because definitely, if let's say I were giving advice to Khazanah or EPF or even the government, I would say, look, have a press conference. You could get EPF and Khazanah, the CEOs, to come and explain this situation and to go into the details. And in fact, I would also push a little bit more to say that given the fact that this may be a politically sensitive issue, get the ministers of finance, maybe not Anwar Ibrahim, maybe not the PM, but the second finance minister, and Anthony Loke to come.
That's right.
Right? Because, people did ask Anthony, oh, what is your take on this and all that? And he said, Wan Faisal actually sent a memorandum to the wrong ministry. You should send it to Khazanah or maybe MOF, because that's sort of like where the jurisdiction lies. But this is maybe not so proactive in the sense that it deals with the third question that I want to ask, is whether or not the MAHB board was consulted on the privatization. I think they were. And also the process by which cabinet was briefed. Right. So why do I say this is relevant and important? Before the 15th of May, a new MAHB chairman was appointed. This was on the 13th of May. A friend of mine, Dr. Nung Sari Ahmad, is an economist who used to be the chairman of MAFCOM. And many people may not remember this. He used to be the MP for Balik Pulau under UMNO for one term, 1995 to 1999. So he's a trained economist, sharp guy, knows economics very well, and has a bit of exposure, I think, to the airline sector through his MAFCOM chairmanship, right? And he would have been appointed with the blessing of the government. Because in the same press statement that was issued by EPF as well as Khazanah, they emphasized that the government of Malaysia continues to exercise control over the appointment of the CEO as well as the chairman.
That's right.
Right. So the chairman appointed 2 days before this announcement was made. Definitely, the key stakeholders within the MAHB board, which includes representatives from MOF and also representatives from the Ministry of Transport, they would have known about it. Right. And I think that cabinet will also have been briefed about this. They would have explained it to cabinet and explained the reasons why. So this is another reason why I think the public communications part is important. Because MOT and also MOF, they have board members there.
That's right.
It makes sense to me to have that kind of press conference where Anthony Loke is there, and then the second finance minister is there together with EPF and Khazanah reps, and even the new chairman of MAHB to explain the rationale for this privatization exercise.
So I'm wondering to myself, right? Because this whole thing is actually a national asset, and there's representative from different ministries. Supposedly, it was briefed to the cabinet or either during parliament or whatnot, right?
No, probably during a cabinet meeting, they would have had MOT or probably MOF would have had to submit some sort of cabinet paper to explain this. Notice that Anthony Loke, who has been answering questions on this, right? He never said that cabinet wasn't briefed. He never said that he wasn't aware about this. He just said the main entities behind this is actually Khazanah and also EPF. So questions should be directed to them.
That's right.
But to me, I think MOT has a board seat there, MOF has a board seat
Yeah.
there. This is part and parcel of government appointing the chairman and
That's
also
right.
the CEO. Why not have a public press conference involving the relevant stakeholders?
That's right. And the fact that you can announce it on the day and then the offer is already made, right? This whole thing in preparation is quite long. It's not like a
Yeah,
1
yeah.
month thing tomorrow come out. It's quite long already. It means
Would have
but
taken
how
probably a
come
year.
so tightly wrapped until
Okay, so on this, I will push back a bit because you're talking about an offer to buy shares at a premium. Obviously, you have to keep it under wraps in case other people come in to buy with the anticipation that be a mandatory general offer to buy the shares at a premium. This is 11
Yep.
ringgit, right? So I agree with it keeping kept under wraps. But once you make the public announcement, then you should have a press conference to answer questions such as the one that you asked just now. Why is it necessary for the privatization to take place, even though MAHB is profitable and it can use some of its profits to do some of the capital investment expansion that was mentioned in the Khazanah and also EPF press statement? I can understand why there's advantages towards taking it private because there may be other restructuring that you want to undergo. There may be other kind of decision making,
corporate
strategizing.
exercises and so on,
Yes,
right?
that you want to.
Yeah. That's the only thing that I can think about actually on why go private.
Correct, and including, for example, exploring possible partnerships using the resources and also network of the other two investment partners, which is the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, ADIA, and also GIP, which is this entity that is owned and controlled 100% by BlackRock. Right?
Yeah.
So all these things should have been explained. And in fact, if let's say you have that press conference, right, you outline all these things, you explain, you put forth your own narrative, then the press will be covering more of what you say, more of what they want to ask with regards to the entire process that will be of interest to not just the financial community, but also the larger public in terms of improvement of quality of service and all that.
Yeah.
But sadly, because the process wasn't done transparently enough, then other people whom I think are a little bit politically opportunistic, such as some people in Bersatu, one Faisal specifically, came out to shape and grab the narrative and headlines for himself.
Yeah, at this point, I really start to wonder once again is that why they don't plan their communications on.
Yeah, I think this is something that we'll continue to hear about over the next.
It's like the X file,
Yes.
cannot be solved.
Yeah, and maybe we just want to end this session by saying one thing, which is, you see, taking you behind the curtain and sort of like preempting some of these questions, right? The minister, let's say Minister of Transport or Minister of Finance, Second Minister of Finance, they are not directly involved in this deal, this announcement at this point in time. But when Parliament session comes next month or next month, I think, they will have to answer these questions in Parliament. So instead of waiting until then and letting the opposition control the narrative, why not take the bull by its horns, have that kind of public engagement through a press conference?
Because right now, right, it has already gone to a point that if you don't read into it, it sounds almost like we are selling off MAHB at 100% as well.
Yeah,
right?
to a foreign
yeah,
entity.
it's like that's how they label it for clickbait sake lah.
Yes.
We are selling out the whole thing. But actually, if we read it properly, it's just 30% being held by GIP.
Yeah, and GIP and ADIA, and 70% is still owned by government.
That's right.
EPF and Khazanah, and most importantly, the appointment of the chairman and the CEO, and which MAHB still doesn't have. They don't have a permanent CEO yet. And in fact, that could have also been part of the narrative. Right? We want to put in a new chairman, we do this exercise, and appointing a new CEO would be part and parcel of the process by which we try to restructure and improve the performance of MAHB.
Yeah, and I think another one part is that because of the political sensitivity and climate right now regarding the Palestinian issue where they brought it up, I felt like they shouldn't have just dismissed it. Yeah, they should have kind of addressed it more delicately rather than just throw it as all these people are what like that, right? But rather maybe just say something that is more in line, right? Like, oh, there's one fact that we'll consider, we'll understand how this money will be allocated, and we'll ensure that it will not go towards the wrong hands, or whatnot, right? Yeah, and those are part and parcel of the things that I felt like government could have done better.
Yeah, and this would have been part and parcel of a larger comm strategy, which sadly wasn't done very well.
Yeah. So maybe before I end this session, right, I think it's good to actually just address this one thing, because a lot of people have been asking it, including myself. Why can't they do it without a foreign investor, without GIP? Why can't Malaysia government just do it ourselves? What's your thought on this? Because you have been in the ministry, you actually understand all these things much better.
Yeah, so other than the potential capital that foreign investors such as ADIA and GIP can bring to the table, there's also the kind of signaling effect, meaning ADIA, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, has worked together with EPF on other privatization deals and other investment deals. So, our audience may not be aware of this, but EPF and also ADIA, they are invested in Columbia Asia, this hospital chain, which has been quite profitable, and they also recently took over the Sime Darby Ramsay hospitals, and EPF and ADIA came together to invest in something called One Health, which is owned or managed by TPG, and a private equity behemoth that's international, but working primarily through their Singapore office, right? So, that having somebody like ADIA there brings a certain level of clout to the table, and because we also want to have good relations with the UAE, where ADIA is based, that also may unlock other potential capital investments in Malaysia and around the region for EPF and also for Malaysia. So that's something that perhaps they could have explained. The other thing is, with regards to GIP, they have investments in different infrastructure kind of entities, not just airports, but also renewable energy, and other utilities and other kinds of investments. So they may be able to bring certain value propositions to the table that we don't really know about because it wasn't explained well, right? So I'm saying that there are good reasons, and I would say that on paper I think there are good reasons for me to support this, but to make that support stronger, all these details should have been explained in a more transparent way.
Yeah, I personally, when I was looking at this thing that time, I thought the Abu Dhabi part was really interesting. I get their angle on that, and I felt that it should have been highlighted further, but it's kind of like buried very much underneath, as almost like a footnote in every single article, That's one. And on the other hand, I think the GIP part was really interesting because, I know that there's that sensitive part towards it, but if you just look at the pure business perspective on the network effect of it, just think about LVMH, who owns a number of luxury brands. And because of that kind of, when you join the LVMH network, your advertising cost itself is reduced significantly. And because of that, it kind of leads to a greater good of the overall growth of the brand. Yes, well, there are arguments about like other things, but at least on paper, on numbers, it does help quite a lot.
And one final thing, I think it would have been fine if, let's say, EPF and Khazanah had said, look, we need this time for privatization so that we can restructure, reorganize, realign. And then later on, if let's say the conditions are better and we are able to show MAHB on a better footing, we can relist back MAHB into the stock market. This may be a way for GIP to exit, for ADIA to exit. And that may be a way for EPF and also Khazanah to enjoy some premiums, some benefits. If let's say after they list back MAHB, if let's say this privatization exercise is successful, they will be able to have a portion to cash out, so to speak, right? So then it becomes a win-win for everybody. And then in the meantime, there may be capital investments put in, airport experience gets better, and so on and so forth. Right, so that becomes the better narrative compared to what we hear right now.
Yeah, that's totally true.
Right, so I think we'll continue to watch this space, and we'll come back to talk about another communications challenge, which I think was handled better, which is the communications narrative on the diesel and then later the petrol subsidy rationalization. Be
That's
right
right.
back. Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, where we talk about public policies in ways which are relevant to you, the man and the woman on the street. And definitely one of the things that will be relevant to you guys would be rollout of the targeted subsidies, firstly for diesel and then later for petrol. And a couple of days ago, on the 21st of May, we had an announcement by Prime Minister Anwar that was about 45 minutes long, a speech, but it boils down to we'll roll out the targeted diesel subsidies relatively soon, probably within the next month or so. Right. So I didn't go through the whole speech. It was a bit long. I just read the news item for this. And I just want to sort of like highlight some of the contrast between the MAHB deal and also this diesel. Although the diesel announcement has been a bit late, but what is clear to me is that there has been an ongoing effort on the part of people within the Ministry of Finance and also the Prime Minister's office ecosystem to talk about the need to roll out these targeted diesel subsidies.
That's right.
Right. So on the 3rd of May, I noticed this because it was circulating on social media that I am aware of. A friend of mine, Nohisham Hussein, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of EPF, but he's been seconded temporarily to be the economic advisor to the Prime Minister. He's a graduate of LSE, my alma mater, and he appeared on a talk show called Jangan Pajak Otak, or JPO, hosted by somebody called Liana Marzuki, who's quite popular on social media. And he talked, in Malay about the reasons for the rationalization for petrol as well as diesel subsidies. So I think that came across as quite informative. And he followed that appearance up by another appearance, this time on RTM, called Bicha Narrative, on the 15th of May, incidentally after the KKB by-elections. Again, talking about the need to rationalize diesel subsidies. So when you see this kind of concerted effort by an important economic advisor on the part of in the Prime Minister's office, does it give you a bit more confidence that there is a more coordinated, communications narrative?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think that this time round, when it comes to this part, they are doing quite well. Yeah, they start by addressing the issues that the national, that the country is facing, and why is it important to actually rationalize this subsidy thing, and then followed by that climax, right, where Prime Minister himself came out and talked about it.
Yeah, so I think it was also useful, after the Prime Minister made his speech, that the second Finance Minister came out, Amir Hamzah, to talk about why this is necessary. He appeared in a conference, I think, organized by EY. And in fact, even before that, he had been talking about the need for, the rollout of targeted diesel subsidies and how much money it will save. The figure that was quoted by Prime Minister Anwar was this rollout will save the government about 4 billion ringgit net. So that's, I think, also important to follow up with this kind of communication strategy. Right? But I think, one thing that maybe can be done better is not just have the Minister for, Minister of Finance to come out, not just have the economic advisor to the Prime Minister come out to speak about this in ways that are relatable, but also hear from others in the ecosystem. So, for example, one of the things that the government will do and has already tested out and done on a trial basis is to use these fleet cards for, commercial and logistic operators that have a lot of vehicles that use diesel, to give them continued use of diesel subsidies. Right. So having that fleet card is useful to try to mitigate the increase in costs as a result of some of the rollback of the diesel subsidies, and many people won't know this, which is the fleet card is actually something that has been done in the past and is under the jurisdiction of the Minister for domestic trade and cost of living. Right? This is a KPD and HEP. Were you aware of this before?
No.
Not really, right?
Yeah, I always thought that it's like if you want to get it, then you have to deal with
Right, transport,
the transport, either the petrol provider.
Ah.
Yeah, then they will settle it for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so the petrol stations are involved in this because they also need to be part and parcel of the ecosystem because the fleet card would use them. They would use that system to authorize the usage of that fleet card. But I think what is perhaps necessary now is for the Minister of Domestic Trade, Consumer Affairs and Cost of Living to come out to explain this to the larger public.
Yep.
Right? So I'm sure this is, his name is Dato' Amirzan Muhammad Ali from Sabah. I'm sure he's not a household name, right? I'm sure you are probably not aware or familiar with him as well.
Yes,
right?
yes, that's right.
Yeah, so he was the deputy before he got promoted to be a full minister because the minister passed away. This Salahuddin Ayub from Amanah. But yeah, I think he would need to come out a little bit more to explain. And in fact, I heard a BFM interview with Datuk Khairul Anwar Abdul Aziz, the president of the Petrol Dealers Association of Malaysia. This points out to the point that you talked about just now. The need to deal with the petrol stations and all that. And the interview with BFM that Datuk Khairul gave was that there are some implementation challenges, but they can be overcome with better coordination and alignment with the relevant authorities, including the Ministry for Domestic Trade. So it would be good if, let's say, the minister could come out to explain this in a more aggressive way. Then that can, he can back up the Minister of Finance 1 and 2 and be part and parcel of that communications team.
That's right. Yeah, I think this is the part that is still missing, but we'll not know until later whether we'll come and speak up again on this matter. But I do see that there are more and more petrol providers that are starting to promote their fleet card. Like, for example, Petronas Smart Pay, they have their fleet card for that. And I believe there are other ones as well who have that. But I guess here's where maybe for them there's a profit involved. It's also part of business. But I guess for the ministry side, maybe no profit involved. It's just implementing. But hopefully they will come on and give a clear guideline. Yeah, that will be, and then it also shows that everyone is in this together lah.
Yeah. So the guidelines are actually not that difficult to explain. There are some vagaries in terms of who is eligible, how many cards you get, things like that. But those can be ironed out with better usage of data, tracking of the spending patterns and the redemption patterns of different transport operators. But I think what is also maybe a little bit of a gap is the fact that the second finance minister, he's quite new to this kind of public communications, right? So it is not something that he's so natural, that is so natural to him. But I think he's trying hard. And then on for the case of the Minister for Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs, he's also a first-time minister, first-time deputy minister, and then later on first-time minister. And I've heard him in Parliament, when during some deliberations, he can be a little bit a bit too aggressive, right? So I think that I'm not sure whether that is holding him or holding the larger communications ecosystem to put him out there.
Right.
So that kind of inexperience is something that I think the people in government are aware of. Whereas if you contrast the communications kind of appeal and also experience of somebody like Tengku Zafrul, whom you've interviewed and you've seen him, refine his public communications over the past few years at MOF and then now at MITI. And also, I think somebody that could have been a very good communicator for this particular rollout, not just for diesel subsidy rationalization, but also for petrol, would be, Stephen Sim, the former deputy finance minister, because he's seen as somebody who really cares about the marhen, so to speak, the rakyat jelata, the man on the street. Right, and a lot of the things that he does, is geared towards that kind of public communication.
Yep.
So if he, was still the deputy finance minister, then I think he would be a point person, one of the key people to communicate these things in a way that would be appreciated and also hopefully accepted by the larger public.
Yeah. But at least I guess on this case, the good side is that at least the Taiko came out and speak already lah.
Yeah, so I think
So there's a lot of saving grace there.
exactly. So I think a successful rollout of the diesel, targeted subsidy program, would also give me more confidence that the government would be able to implement the petrol subsidy program, targeted subsidy program in a much more smooth way. But I think this is where, again, looking at the communications part, drawing you behind the curtain a little bit, one of the main challenges that the government will face during the petrol subsidy, rationalization exercise is who will be the key spokesman for the implementation of this strategy, right? Because PM will come out to say certain things like what he did, but the details will have to be left to other people to try to explain more, and also handle some of the press questions and all that.
Yeah, I think in this case, the
So who will it
Minister
be?
for Domestic Trade and Cost of Living should be the person, right?
Maybe not so much for the petrol subsidy, because the petrol subsidy may not be linked to a fleet card or may not be linked to some sort of a IC or some sort of a card that's managed by them for redemption purposes. It's more likely that the Ministry of Finance would use the Sumbangan Tunai Rama or maybe the Padu ecosystem to give cash transfer maybe on a monthly basis to the rakyat, to the non-T20, so to speak, right? But if let's say I were to put you to put a question to you, if let's say after Prime Minister Anwar makes that statement later on about petrol subsidy rationalization or targeting, who do you think would be maybe one of the spokespeople for this process?
Who maybe, as in my guess, right?
One of your guesses, maybe.
Chances are Rafizi.
So Rafizi could be one of the spokespeople. He's
very
been
high chance.
vocal on
He has
this.
been always very vocal about it. Yeah.
So from a communications perspective, what do you think he would come across as a good spokesman, somebody who can relate to the man on the street with regards to petrol subsidy rationalization? Do you think he would be able to play that role?
Based on his track record of publicity image, not so.
Okay. Why?
Because very often he is seen as someone who's very abrasive, right? Just speak up his mind. Yes, he makes sense on those things they say, but there is very little empathy. Yeah,
Yes.
I think to be the spokesperson for this particular
issue.
the person must be someone with image among the people that's very empathetic.
Yep.
Yeah, like you say, Steven Sim or someone else, right? Yeah. I would say that even at this point, if you were to put up the second finance minister, it could be a great thing as well because he was EPF's CEO. And so therefore, there is already this image that he is a caretaker of the people's well-being to start with. So it would put him in a good place to, go in. And because I would say that on the 21st of May, that time when the Prime Minister gave his speech, he laid down a lot of very good points. Like from government no money to actually quite a lot of the subsidy was being taken up for
leakages,
smuggling, and stuff like that. So there's already a lot of points being laid down there for him to follow. So he doesn't even need to run far from script. And based on what he has been always doing with EPF, it will just go in line, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think the government needs to again focus on better communication and also let us know the details so that it can be more reassuring to people in terms of knowing the details, and for the business community being able to plan for those eventualities and maybe have more sympathetic and empathetic spokespeople on this particular issue. Yep.
That's right.
So I'll be right back to talk about what's going to happen this weekend at the Bersih Congress. Be right back. Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, and we're going to jump straight into a discussion on Bersih Congress that's happening this weekend.
Yep.
And the idea of organizing this Congress is to remind the public, according to their website, of the need to fulfill certain promises and put in certain institutional reforms in terms of elections and also politics before the next general election, GE16, that's due in 2027. So, Peter, if I were to sort of like pull you back into history and talk about Bersih and the rallies that they've had, did you attend any of the Bersih rallies?
Yes, I recall I went to one, but not the most exciting one. I think the perception of Bersih, to a certain extent, ever since that time until now, after the change of government, less exciting already.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe because the exciting part was super exciting. So
yeah. So actually, this is a question that I'm interested in as well, and I'm interested to hear the views of our listeners and our audience as well. If let's say Bersih, goes ahead, plans this Congress, has certain demands on the government. I also understand that Bersih, together with Ideas, a think tank, they're organizing an event next week on advocating for political financing, to make the system more transparent and to perhaps suggest state funding for some of the political parties according to some set formula. It would be interesting to see if, let's say, the government maybe doesn't respond in the same way that was promised especially when Pakatan Harapan was in the opposition, working together with Bersih, whether or not there would be momentum that can escalate and perhaps give reason for Bersih and civil society members to organize Bersih 6. Do you think that could be a possibility before the next general election?
I think that there is a possibility, and I personally think that PM is keeping a close eye on it, because based on his speech on the other day as well, he talked a lot about corruption, everything like that. I want to reform. This is the first time after a very long time that I see him really make a very explicit statement about it, like how he used to. Yeah. And then just nice, Bersih is saying that they are guys, so I can't help but to relate, to think that, okay, I'm trying to give you guys an answer in order to pacify people a little bit.
Yeah, but of course that needs to be backed up by actual action.
That's right.
Right? Whether or not, for example, things like separating the powers of prosecution in the Attorney General's office from being the legal advisor to the government, and political financing and things of that nature. Those are, I think, interesting issues. And I think also, we talked about this last week, the appointment of the Election Commission chairman as well. So that would be one of the things that I think civil society will pay attention to.
Oh, yes.
And, not forgetting how some of these issues can perhaps gather momentum together with things that the public may, care about more. For example, the whole issue of whether Najib is going to get pardoned or whether he's going to get home arrest or not.
Yes.
Right? Because remember, last time Bersih, they escalated from just advocating for electoral reform. It then got the momentum from 1MDB as well. And that's when people, started to go out in the streets to protest and things things of that nature.
Yeah.
So you could easily have this kind of accumulation of different issues.
Yes, which our PM has been awfully quiet about.
Right. So I think for me, it's quite interesting to see what kind of public traction this will get, and also to what extent different leaders in Pakatan Harapan, maybe some of the backbenchers, will also want to echo and support some of the calls that Bersih has made.
Yeah, I think one of the part that I'm quite interested to see is political financing.
And also, the other thing is constituency allocation.
Yes, that's right. Because those are some of the things that it doesn't harm your opponent the most, but it harms the people under the jurisdiction the most.
Yeah, because they're not given
correct.
the
So
same
it
kind of
also
access.
end up shows that you have less care for the people, but more about getting power.
Yeah.
At the meantime, right, I want to ask you one thing. Do you think that the people actually kind of grew a little bit tired about Bersih?
I think to some degree, in the sense that, especially after 2018, change in government, and then we started to see some reforms, and then after that, Sheraton move happened, and Bersih was sort of like caught in no man's land, didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And after 2022, Harapan came back into power, but together with UMNO, right? So then the whole thing has to restart, and I think Bersih is trying to find its feet, trying to gauge public sentiment, and also I think the government is trying to see whether or not, to what extent it can work together with Bersih to fulfill at least some of their
Right.
demands. And then, the rakyat is on the periphery, seeing how to react to some of these things and whether they can get the momentum or not, right? So, interesting space to watch. And I think the kind of strategies that Bersih would want to use in terms of mobilizing civil society, because that was what they did in the early part of Bersih 1 and so forth. That is also, I think, an interesting space to watch. And also, to what extent does the opposition want to cooperate with Bersih?
That's right. Yeah. So here's where it leads to this part about it, which how much does an activist group like this can really contribute to policy changes to a certain extent. Now, Bersih has proven itself once. I think out of all the policy, all these activist group, Bersih definitely has a great result because of that 2018. But it was because of everything worked in the favor and they managed to rally the people. But ever since then, it kind of lost its edge because after it's like, what are you fighting for now? Because the only existence was to change government at the point, at least in other people's opinion. And subsequently from then onwards, there was not much of a very clear direction. Then number two also, I don't know, I think it's a part of this history thing, right? Yeah, when you read history also, a lot of people say that the general who goes to war with you and kill the enemy for you will not be the general that you want to keep when you are in power.
Yes,
so sometimes I feel like they are in that position right now.
Yeah, because I think, they went from opposing the government, and that got them a lot of traction, to working with the government after 2018. Obviously you have to take a more conciliatory approach. And now they are sort of like in between, between balancing between making certain demands public and also working together with the government. And I think one of the ways in which I've seen this done in a relatively effective way would be Bersih working with ideas to consult widely among the political parties, both from opposition as well as from the government, to do things like political financing. And also Bersih, did issue a statement a couple of weeks back to say that the process of appointing two of the election commissioners were not done transparently. It did not go through the parliamentary, the special parliamentary select committee on elections and institutional reform. And one of the things that I think was quite interesting to note is the chairman of that special parliamentary select committee, the MP for Selayang, YB William Leong. He actually came out with a statement last week supporting Bersih's position to have the election commission chairman nominees to be vetted through his parliamentary select committee. And this was a couple of days after I issued my own statement supporting Bersih's position on that. So it'll be interesting to see whether that spirit of electoral reformation still is burning strong within some of the Pakatan Harapan MPs, including the backbenchers. So we'll watch this space closely, and if there are any interesting things to report back after the Bersih Congress, you'll be sure we'll be discussing it here.
Definitely.
Yeah. So let's quickly go on to the next topic, which is this issue of death threats to Teresa Kok, right? So on the surface, it's just, I think, death threats, which, obviously we condemn, and we do not want that to be part and parcel of the Malaysian political culture. But I want to draw you behind the curtain on some of the sort of like political intrigue, using this as a lens to understand the Malaysian political landscape, in a more deeper way, right? So after Teresa Kok made the police report and let people know that, there was a death threat, and then also 2 bullets put in the mail. I'm not sure whether you noticed this, but one of the first people to come out to issue a statement to condemn this act was the past Secretary General, Takayuddin Hassan, right?
Yes.
When you saw that, what was your reaction?
Immediately, remember we were always talking about how PAS is trying to show a very moderate front now. That exactly came to my mind, and this played right into it to show that they are the first one to actually stand in solidarity. Not anyone else but PAS. Yeah, kind of portraying this very moderate side of them.
And then, interestingly, I'm not sure, again, whether you noticed this or not, but of course I pay quite close attention to these kinds of political developments. Shortly after the PAS Secretary General came out with this condemnation, my friend, the MP for Kepong, who's also a botak brother, YB Lim Lip Eng, he responded by saying, yeah, we appreciate your condemnation and your solidarity with Teresa, but almost accusing PAS by maybe even instigating some of these actions because they were the ones that have been instigating hate towards the DAP, especially past President Abdul Hadi Awang, coming out to say, especially during the KKB by-election, to accuse DAP of a lot of things, accuse DAP of wanting to dilute Malay political strength and the control of politics by Malays in this country. So what was your reaction when you saw YB Lim Eng's statement?
I feel like if he were to remove PAS name from the whole picture, he would have made a very good statement there. Yeah, all he needed to do is just that part. But by adding other people's name, by throwing that into accusation, now it doesn't sound like a call for unity, but it sounds like drama.
So it's basically trying to score some political points.
Right, because if let's say you were to say all that, the optics for it will be great because now you come and say, yeah, that's why we want to promote a more inclusive Malaysia, blah, 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 blah. And we're glad that even PAS is willing to be more inclusive. People can read in between the lines and tea leaves and that kind of thing, right? Yeah. But the point is that now suddenly when you go and mention other people and go and throw an accusation, you're putting your own self in a bad light.
Okay.
Yeah.
A reaction to that was the past MP for Bachok, Shahir Che Sulaiman, also debated Rafizi in one of the economic debates that they had, responded by saying or telling DAP, you reap what you sow. Meaning to say that actually we are not the extremists, you are the extremists, right? That was his, his basic statement to Lip Eng, lah, right? And this is almost like a tit for tat kind of situation,
Yep.
right? So again, trying to draw you behind the curtain, lah. When Lip Eng does something like that, right? Or another DAP MP, he's playing to the gallery. Meaning playing to the gallery of DAP supporters and DAP members and maybe even certain DAP leaders to say that I can use this opportunity to whack PAS leader that is not liked by DAP leaders and also DAP supporters, namely Hadi Awang. And then the PAS MP Shahir is trying to show his own chops, so to speak, his own ability to defend his president.
Right.
So these are some of the internal politics that are taking place in public with regards to these kinds of tit for tat.
Oh, so it's kind of like, I'm able to do this. Yeah, so
the interesting thing is, both of these approaches, right, are actually appealing to the more sort of like fringe or the more not so centrist people.
Yeah.
Right, on both sides.
The niche mentality.
Yes. Basically appealing to your own base.
Yeah.
Right, and I sort of like contrast this, right? This is appealing to their own base. Right, and both sides have their own version of slandering the other side.
Yeah.
Right, DAP whacking PAS whacking DAP for each of them saying that the other one is a more extreme, right? Contrast this to what Anthony Loke has been trying to do, right? He went to Kota Baru recently. And he said, look, we are open to encouraging or, even helping, facilitate more international flights to Kota Baru. And he was there together with the Kelantan MB. Right. So when you see that, what is your impression? Is it like good cop, bad cop, or, or are politicians all like very hard to understand?
People are not falling in line. That's how I feel.
Okay.
Yeah, at least from what I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I draw you behind the curtain, right? And this is referring to a statement that was made by Zaid Ibrahim, who used to be from UMNO and then later he joined DAP. Later on he formed his own party. His party kicked him out. I'm not sure which party he belongs to now. Probably no party. He actually asked DAP to invite PAS into the unity government.
Oh yes, that became a hot topic as well.
Yes.
Deserve a show on its own.
Yes. Yes. And, this is an interesting discussion to be had because political analysts are quite divided on this. And I think the kind of divide that you see political analysts talk about, and this is where I draw you behind the curtain, is also a divide that exists within PAS and also DAP. Meaning, there are some people in PAS that may consider working with DAP under the right circumstances, under the right electoral arrangements, after the next general election, for example. Yep. There may be people in the DAP who would be willing to consider being in government together with PAS, under the right circumstances. But there are also people on either party that would be dead set against this.
Yes.
Right. So, again, the factions within each party. Remember the side that I talked about? They are appealing to the base.
That's right.
They are part of a group, on both sides, that would be saying, never work with the other side over my dead body, so to speak. Right. So that kind of situation is also being mirrored by the statements that certain leaders are saying. So Hadi is saying certain things about DAP, right? But his Secretary General is sometimes appearing a little bit more conciliatory. Lip Eng is saying certain things about Hadi Awang, but Anthony is reaching out, talking to the PAS Menteri Besar in Kelantan, also talking to the PAS Menteri Besar in Terengganu, right? So then this becomes something very interesting.
Yes.
Because let me put this scenario to you, and this may be something that we want to highlight. I'm sure others may consider highlighting as well. What happens if after the next general election, you have a situation where in Peninsular Malaysia, where we have 165 parliamentary seats, PN wins about 100 seats and PAS wins 70 seats. DAP maintain, let's say, 30 seats. UMNO is decimated. PKR is left with maybe 5 to 10 seats, mostly in mixed or non-Malay majority areas. Right? And then the king repeats what the former king Agong said. I want a unity government. Right? Yeah. PAS is the biggest party. Okay, you can have a prime minister from PAS, maybe the Menteri Besar for Terengganu, Dr. Sam. But try to reach out to as many parties as possible to join your government. I want to make it as inclusive as possible. Right? And then DAP being the majority non-Malay party, representing non-Malays in Peninsula and some in Sabah and Sarawak, will have to make a decision. Do they want to be in government together with the government, a unity government with a PAS prime minister, right? And then the kind of different kind of thinking within the leadership, different groups within the DAP leadership would maybe exhibit itself.
Yep.
And maybe even PAS, they may have certain different kind of thinking within different groups.
Yeah. This whole thing reminds me of Game of Thrones. I think all the politicians should watch Game of Thrones.
I think some of them have. Yeah.
And having said that as well, I think what's more exciting is prior to that. That's where a lot of dramas are going to brew. Now that you say it already, it makes me start to wonder, like, election is not too far away. 3 to 4 years down the road, right? And if you want to do any preparation, this is about time. Because you probably need about 2 years to actually have a more synchronized message going out, or the 1 year. I mean, a good planning, right? So this is the first year to actually put yourself in that circumstance or that situation. So to a certain extent, could it be, if I were to guess based on what you were saying, everyone is trying to create an environment that is favoring to their position?
Favoring to their position can be interpreted in different ways. It could be favoring their position within the party.
Okay, favoring their political stance. So let's say if I'm the one who says that I do not want to work with certain party. So whenever my leader were to go out and try to put out reach out and to build the bridge, I will purposely go and do something and burn the bridge. Why do I do that? Is because I burn already what? Then but it's not I burn one. Somewhere far away that I'm not very familiar with, he burn one, not I burn one. So then what happens is that when my leader or someone else wants to reach out, it makes it harder. So therefore, when nearing the day, in order to win, I have to choose either be your friend or not be your friend. What am I doing is just increasing the chances of you cannot be that friend. Is it like that?
Something like that. I think more details may be revealed over time, especially when we have more material to again look at and to analyze the situation. But I would sort of like say this and end this section by saying this lah. I think after 2022, where we saw the unlikely and almost unthinkable situation of DAP being in the same government with UMNO happening, I think it's probably wise for all political parties and the leaders of these different political parties to keep their options open.
Yep, I totally agree.
Yeah, so watch this space, and we'll see if, let's say, what I say just now becomes something that may be under consideration after the next general election, GE16. Be right back, where we're going to talk about the final topic, which is Hock as the highest paid CEO in the US.
Welcome back to the final section of Are We Okay? And right now we're gonna go into something more light-hearted and less political,
Okay,
yeah.
yes.
So we're gonna talk about Hock. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For those of you who do not know, Hock is actually a Malaysian-born American, the highest paid CEO in United States right now. And this is not the first time that he made it, but rather a second time. So first question I want to ask you is this: do you know him personally?
I think I may have met him before when I was deputy minister.
Ooh.
Yeah, because he's very familiar with the E&E ecosystem in Penang, and he really wanted to try to contribute back to Malaysia. Yeah, I mean, it's good for him. He's going to get paid $162 million US.
A lot of money, yeah.
Yeah.
CEO of Broadcom, yeah. The next thing is this, right? Do you notice Malaysia, we have a lot of very good people who actually end of the day living and and what we can acknowledge is Malaysian born. Every time I hear this kind of news, I feel a little bit sad because it's kind of like...
It's actually, to me, both sad and happy. Sad in the sense that, we've lost good talents like Hock. But at the same time, I'm happy for him because, he would not have gotten the same kind of opportunities if he had remained in Malaysia. Right? So, but the fact that he still, I think, has Malaysia close to his heart, still comes back, knows the Penang ecosystem, and I'm sure he's trying to facilitate for some of the Malaysian companies that are based in Penang in the E&E sector to be part and parcel of what he's doing with Broadcom. That should be something that we should celebrate.
Yep.
Let me throw this question back at you, which is, when we hear these kinds of stories, right? Oh, Malaysian-born CEO getting being the highest paid CEO in the US. I think most of us would feel happy for him, good for him, and all that kind of stuff, right? But if, let's say, we hear news that, Malaysian CEO is getting paid X amount, then the reaction would be maybe a bit different.
A little bit different, yeah.
What do you think that reaction would be?
Usually, the first thing that everyone will be asking is that, what about their normal staff? Yeah, how much are they getting paid? I heard that recently they just VSS a group of people or laid off a group of people, and then he's giving himself such a big fat paycheck.
So there's a bit of disconnect, right?
Yeah. But I think it all comes down to how popular you are, because when I'm looking at in terms of US as well, if you're looking at Mark Zuckerberg, when he announced his pay, well, everyone says the exact same thing like what we talk about. So I guess part of it is also a little bit of an optics thing. When you are too high profile, people always want to see you
Bring
go
you
down
down,
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it also draws us back to the question that maybe is relevant to our MAHB discussion as well. In a sense that if you are going to pay our CEOs a certain amount, we want to see it linked to some sort of performance.
That's right.
Just like how Hock also needs to fulfill certain performance criteria before he gets paid the full amount.
That's right.
I think we shouldn't have this notion that, our CEOs should be underpaid, especially if, let's say, the result of that is that not just the CEOs are underpaid, the C-suite gets underpaid and blah, blah, further down the road, and even down to the lower level workers, they will get their pay suppressed. So I think it would be good if, let's say, rising tide can lift all boats. If, let's say, the CEO gets paid higher because of good performance incentives, then other staff can also get a higher pay because of incentives, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and if, let's say, the company does well, like, for example, Singapore Airlines, right? They did well recently, and they announced a 8-month bonus for their staff.
I
That
think
everyone is happy.
Singapore is one of the famous examples that they are willing to pay their people well. When you say, right, you pay peanuts, you get monkey. Yeah, so I have no problem against high pay.
Yeah, but it should be related to performance.
It should be performance based. Yeah. I mean, even in our company, a small company also, we make it as much performance based as possible. It all comes down to how you want to structure it. And this kind of reminds me about our civil service as well. After that whole announcement of the increase in pay, everyone is very happy. But most of the people that I speak to, even in the government service itself, many of them did mention one thing. Their only concern is this: there is no proper tie in towards performance. So actually, how does that?
I have brought this up before, that promotion should be based on objective evaluations, and not just how you may be able to suck up to your bosses and things like that.
That's right.
But I think probably our audience will also be wondering, what happens if, let's say, we put in performance-related pay for our ministers and our politicians? That would be quite interesting, right?
That would be quite interesting. That would be very, very interesting. Yeah, maybe if there's still going to be pension, the pension should be tied up to how long-lasting the effect is.
Probably some of those HR experts would be able to put in a better system than what I can think of. But I think the accountability from the perspective of ministerial and political performance is one that needs to be further fleshed.
Remember the time when Najib stepped down and then he got a huge amount of benefit?
That's something that all prime ministers get. Yeah.
And then after that, he was he went to jail. Yeah, it's like, okay.
But
I thought like, where's the performance part, right?
Well, for Najib, you could say even when he stepped down, benefit that he got paled in comparison to the billions that were squandered as a result of the 1MDB scandal.
That's true.
Right? So I think for us, pay is one thing, but especially for the politicians, the governance part, the transparency part, the sort of like institutional structures to prevent corruption, those are the things that are much more important. And it boils down to some of the things that we talked about earlier when we talk about the Bersih Congress, the need for political financing, institutional reform. I think all those things are a really important part of the larger ecosystem in Malaysia.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think that wraps up this session, this particular episode. And thanks so much for your support, getting to 20,000 subscribers. And listen out for when we'll announce our live event. It should be sometime sooner rather than later.
Yep. So see you guys next week.